It's time to take a look at what's grabbing headlines here in France. France, a country known for its street demonstrations. Well, sometimes those demonstrations can get out of hand. The government has asked the police to explore new ways to control fringe groups within demonstrations who show up to wreak havoc. These new measures come as the government is facing street protests against planned reforms to the labour code, unemployment benefits and pension systems. And now for more on this story, we're going to cross to Florence Villeminot, who's here to talk us through the French press review.
That's right. Well, Le Figaro is focusing on those measures that the police is trying to come up with to deal with what are known as casseurs, so people who show up to these demonstrations and try to essentially fight with the cops. Let's take a look at the front page of Le Figaro, which got a sneak peek at this new strategy, if you will. Police are exploring several avenues, for instance, trying to break up crowds. Excuse me. Also trying to figure out how to identify these casseurs. You can read more about it inside Le Figaro. For instance, they're thinking about maybe using paintball type guns to shoot not really shoot them, but get paint on them to try and identify them. They're also trying to figure out ways to just physically keep them at bay. They're thinking about using sound cannons, stroboscopes. So it's all sorts of measures that you can read about here in Le Figaro.
And there's also a communication warfare being waged on social media.
That's right. Le Figaro says that these activists, these casseurs as they're known, are very active on social media. They share photos and videos trying to ridicule police. So the police is trying to win this communications war by filming crowds, tweeting more. Do keep in mind, though, that this issue about casseurs, these hooligans, I guess you could call, is a real issue, but it tends to be played up by the conservative media, like Le Figaro, which is very much in favor of the police, not so much in favor of these street demonstrations. Meanwhile, left-wing critics say that the police use the excuse of trying to crack down on these casseurs as just an excuse to crack down on demonstrators in general.
Well, let's move on to something completely different. Catholic paper Le Croix has a special report flow on North Korea.
Le Croix is known for its quality reports on foreign stories. So let's take a look at the front page of Le Croix. You can see, where does North Korea's money come from? Pyongyang, according to Le Croix, has put in place a number of circuits, official and secret circuits, to finance its nuclear program, and it's quite a robust system, according to Le Croix. North Korea, for instance, has been targeted by numerous sanctions. The latest ones came in August, but though its economy, it will suffer a little bit. Le Croix says it won't actually be pulled down to its knees. The North Korean economy is stronger than we think, says Le Croix. Pyongyang has been organizing itself for quite a while to try and be able to survive any kind of embargo. All this thanks to a network of shell companies. It's quite a fascinating read. I do recommend it in La Croix today.
Well, let's come back to France now, Flo. The famous street artists have given an interview to Libération.
That's right. You can take a look at some of his works here in Libération. His street artist name is Invader. He's anonymous, of course, being a street artist. He's quite famous in France and abroad. Since 1998, he's been busy decorating the walls of Paris, New York, London, Tokyo. You can see here photos from Ravenna in Italy. So these are ceramic tile mosaics of Space Invaders. Now, this summer, we talked a lot about Invader because two people pretending to be municipal workers here in France actually removed several of his works in the French capital and sold pieces on the internet.
And it launched a huge debate on street art and who it belongs to, and Invader weighed in on this debate.
Indeed. If you take a look inside Libération, they have this interview with Invader. He talks about lots of things, but he does come back on this episode that happened this summer because it raised quite an interesting debate. Is it possible to steal street art? And so he has a very strong opinion about it. He says, look, it's not nice to see people destroying your work with a hammer and trying to sell pieces of it on internet to the first buyer. Street art doesn't mean just because it's in the street, it belongs to everyone, so it belongs to me. I can take a hammer and bring it back to my living room if I want. He says, look, just because a piece of street art was created without an authorization doesn't mean it shouldn't be protected as an artwork. And he says, in his opinion, and indeed this is what the law thinks as well, it's up to the person who actually owns the wall that the street art is on to decide whether or not to keep that piece of street art up. Do keep in mind, though, that the people who removed his artwork this summer have been arrested, and he hopes that it's going to serve as an example for people who might have gotten ideas about stealing street art.
Interesting. Can you imagine what would happen if people started trying to knock off Banksy's work?
Indeed.
Or French artist Jaya. Now, finally, Flo, a word on football. Bayern Munich has sacked its manager after a historic defeat.
That's right. It's a pretty harsh blow for Carlo Ancelotti. Remember that match on Wednesday? PSG really creamed Bayern Munich 3-0. Well, the 58-year-old Italian coach got the sack. You can read about it, of course, in the sports daily L'Equipe. So essentially, it's not, in a way, it doesn't seem fair because he had led Bayern to the Bundesliga title last season, but it seemed like things were a little bit trickier this season. According to the board of Bayern Munich, the performance of our team since the season started did not meet the expectations that we put on them. So it seems like that's the reason he got the sack. He's actually going to be replaced temporarily by his assistant, a Frenchman, Willy Sagnol, and the French press, you can see, is quite excited about that news.
Well, thank you very much, Flo, for that run of what's happening in the press. Thank you for that. And you're watching live from Paris. We'll be back on the other end of this very short break. Do stay with us.